I've been doing a sort of a commentary on the book of Ecclesiastes, and we are in chapter 5, working our way through the book, 1 to 7. For anyone interested, if you wanted to go back to the other videos, the preceding videos, it would be on the playlist entitled Ecclesiastes. So as we come to chapter 5, 1 to 7, it reads, "Keep your foot when you go to the house of God, and be ready to hear, then to give the sacrifice of fools, for they consider not that they do evil. Be not rash with your mouth, and let not your heart be hasty to utter anything before God, for God is in heaven, and you upon the earth. Therefore let your words be few. For a dream comes through the multitude of business, and a fool's voice is known by the multitude of words. When you vow a vow unto God, defer not to pay it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Pay that which you have vowed. Better is it that you should not vow than that you should vow and not pay. Suffer not your mouth to cause your flesh to sin, neither say before the messenger that it was an error. Wherefore should God be angry at your voice and destroy the work of your hands? For in the multitude of dreams and many words, there are also different vanities, but fear God." Now he looks at going into the temple and making vows that you cannot fulfill, not necessarily believing you would do it anyway. So guard your foot as you go into the house of God, Kohelet says. I am understanding here the house of God to have been the temple, and be ready to listen rather than speak. It is better than when fools give sacrifice, for they do not know that they do evil. It is better to listen than to give the sacrifice of fools, with many words that you cannot carry out in the presence of the Lord. For the fools do not know that they are doing wrong. So do not be rash with your mouth, and do not let your heart be hasty to bring forth any word before God. Do not be rash with your vows, and tell God what you are going to do if you, I should say, don't tell God what you are going to do if you are not going to do it. For God is in heaven, and you are upon the earth, and he is your sovereign. Therefore, let your words be few. As we approach the Lord, we need to be careful, the Kohelet is saying, that we are able to do what we say we are going to do, rather than make all kinds of commitments and not do them. He then gives a proverb to illustrate his theme. For a dream comes in a multitude of activity or business, and the voice of a fool in the multitude of words. If we have a dream, I believe the Kohelet is saying many times it is because our mind is so full of the activity we have been doing. Because of the multitude of business we have been engaged in, our mind does not seem to stop in our dreams even. The same is true with the voice of a fool, that we see a fool's voice in the multitude of words that he vows to God, and yet he cannot carry out. So he is stating that a dream indicates a busy mind, while a person who is busy with words indicates that he is not wise. When you vow a vow then unto God, be careful not to defer the vow, for he has no pleasure in fools. In other words, it is better not to make a vow than to make a vow and not carry it out. Better it is that you should not vow than you should vow and not fulfill it. It is better not to make any vow than to make a vow but not carry it out, he is saying. Do not give your mouth to sin, neither say before the messenger that it is an error. I think the messenger here is looking at the person that comes to you to have you fulfill the vow that you have made. Maybe you have made a vow that you were going to give some money or do certain things, and the messenger comes to collect, and you say, I made an error. He is saying, this is not good. Wherefore, why should the Lord be angry at your voice? You did not have to make a vow. I think an application here would be Ananias and Sapphira in the New Testament. For example, they made a vow that about their field, and they took back some of the money, and tragedy happens. So do not let the Lord be angry and destroy the work of your hands, he is saying. Be silent rather than loquacious when you go before the Lord. In other words, speaking many words. Furthermore, in the multitude of words and vanities, there are also many things. I think here there is a play on the word devarim. It can mean dreams bring many things, and it can also mean words. So in the multitude of dreams and vanities, such as vowing when you shouldn't be doing that, there are many words that lead to the Lord being angry. Therefore, fear the Lord, he says. Better to revere the Lord than to make all kinds of vows that you will not carry out, that are simply rash statements before him. How often do we say, I'll do what you want me to do, dear Lord, and I'll say what you want me to say. I think of all the old hymns I remember growing up, but it was just rote. There was not a real seriousness of purpose. So the Kohelet is warning against that and looks at the person who goes to the temple and promises many things, but will never come through with it. It is like making a New Year's resolution to the Lord, but never carrying it out. Kohelet says it is better to not do it than to make a vow and hence not fulfill it. The next segment of chapter 5 is the oppression of the poor through greediness. It reads, if you see the oppression of the poor and violent perverting of judgment and justice in a province, marvel not at the matter, for he that is higher than the highest regards, and there are higher than they. Moreover, the profit of the earth is for all. The king himself is served by the field. He looks at the corruption and the heavy extortions that are being imposed by governors on people at the time, and everyone is taking a share of the profit. If you see the oppression of the poor and the violent robbing of justice and righteousness, do not marvel, he's saying. Do not be surprised if you see this. Marvel not concerning the matter, for one higher than the high is watching, and there are higher than these. So we are looking at a hierarchy. In other words, several officials are watching because each wants a cut of the profit. So he says the profit of a land is in all. In other words, everybody wants a profit. He is applying it here to kings and politics where you have a hierarchical system. Furthermore, a king is making himself servant to the field, he says. A king allows this field to serve him for his benefit. He has subsidiaries under him, and the field is serving ultimately, though, the king. He looks at the abuse of power and the hierarchical system of his day and how everyone wants a cut. You can see then the violence done as far as justice and what is right concerned. Sometimes you can see this in religious groups. You can have a hierarchical structure which can sometimes be deciding what they want those under them to do. Sometimes then what is wanted is not right. In certain structures, if you do not agree with the hierarchy, even if what you consider the hierarchy doing to be immoral, then you would be in trouble. So this can be applied also to church. You can have a system that can be quite discriminatory to those who are not necessarily doing what the hierarchy desires. This may even involve what one might feel to be moral issues. And then the third area that he covers in chapter 5 is the love and vanity, I should say, vanity of the love of money. And this is a fairly long section. And so I think I'm going to stop here. He's going to talk about loving money and how that won't satisfy either. And he moves into that to teach that even if one has a lot of money, there are more eaters that come along, and eventually he has to leave everything. And so he lives his life constantly trying to hide his money, and he leaves this world the same way that he came in. And so I think I'll wait and go into that in depth. That's verses 10 to 17, the vanity of the love of money. And we'll pick that up on the next video that we do on the Kohelet.